Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Make a Mess of My Car, Get Messy Yourself. I was on my way home after a very long day working at the hospital. As much as I would have rather just kept driving, the gaslight blazing away on my dash told me to stop being lazy and just fill the tank. After hopping off the highway, I head for the small station I frequently use. It only has 2 pumps, both sides, so 4 spots. Even though it has great prices, I rarely have to wait more than a car or 2 for an open spot. Other than the station, the road is pretty much empty nearby. The station was on my side of the road, so I turned on my right-hand directional. As I begin to turn the wheel into the station, this lunatic in a Mercedes, coming from the other direction, sliced through the out lane and inches across my front bumper to beat me into the parking lot. I slammed on my brakes, sending my gym bag and a stack of folders shooting off the passenger seat into jumbled mess on the floor. I am not a big swearer, but that had me cussing like a sailor. As I pulled in, I noticed a police car in a parking spot outside the building that houses the cashier and the tiny convenience store. My hopes rose as I prayed the officer saw the crazy lady's stunt and I was about to witness instant karma. No such luck, sigh. She pulled to one side of the pumps. I pulled to the other. I got out, swiped my card, and started the gas flowing. Then, clear as a bell, I hear the snottiest sounding voice issuing from the Mercedes. This is unbelievable. I was clearly here first, but this idiot is filling up the other car first. No. He hasn't even started me yet. I swear these people are stupid as crap out here. Hold on, Shelley. I have to deal with this moron or I will be here all day. Now the dreaded, excuse me, is aimed right at me. You know you don't need to wait for the tank to be full before you start another car? Now come here and take this, she said, waggling a credit card at me. If I am late because of you, I will be calling your boss. And just so you know, it is very rude to service customers out of order. I was here ahead of that guy. I looked down and sure enough she has a New Jersey license plate. In NJ, you don't pump your own gas, an attendant does it for you. My state may have a few full service stations left, but honestly I haven't seen one in ages. Here, you pump for yourself. If she had gotten out of her car she would have seen I was that guy, but the pump blocked her line of sight. I considered an "I don't work here lady" style response, but the primped up entitled expression on this self-absorbed bee required more from me. She stared harder at me, raising her brows, and waggled the card even more emphatically, before I knew what to do. I let go of my pump, stepped closer and took the card from her manicured fingers. As she sneered at me, I looked her right in the eyes and snapped my hand downward, flinging her card straight into the trash barrel beside the pump. Someone must have thrown a slushie or milkshake in there, because the card made an awesome splat sound when it hit the bottom. The harpy shrill screech that ensued made the thought of sorting out all the files on the floor of my car almost worth it. It could have stopped there and I would have happily driven away with my half-full tank, but it was not over yet. She was screaming obscenities at me as I turned away, broiling out the Mercedes in her designer outfit, and completely losing her mind. That was when the officer came dashing out of the store. "Excuse me miss, are you all right? What is going on? This man assaulted me and stole my card. He threw it in there," she says, stabbing a 3-inch long nail at the barrel. "Is that correct, sir?" "Barely." She insisted, and I mean insisted, I take her card. Since I am under no obligation to provide her service with the card, nor did I want it, I disposed of it in the most expedient manner available to me. I replied, gesturing at the wonderful trash receptacle myself. "That was a pretty petty thing too. I think you should get it for her," the officer decreed. The NJB was beaming with smug malice at that. "I will under one condition. You detain us both, then go look at the store's parking lot camera. Once you see how we entered the lot, you can decide who goes dumpster diving." He raised a brow at me but says, "Fine." He takes our licenses and tells us to both to wait there. She is a bit perplexed at first, but her natural entitlement must have convinced her she has to be in the right. It is not long before she began to hiss a handful of pretty vile threats at me. I ignored her and finished filling my tank. My passive smiling confidence must have unnerved her eventually. She crept back into the driver's seat and began talking about lawyers with Shelley. About 20 minutes later, the officer returned. He handed me back my license and told me I'm free to go. Before New Jersey can get a word out, he very sternly rounds on her and said, "Registration, ma'am." That made cleaning up her mess totally worth it. Next one is titled, "Informed the bank when the mortgagee was in violation of their mortgage agreement." A few years back, I was the president of my HOA. Our association is not big, under 30 houses, and we collect annual dues as any HOA would. The dues primarily pay for snow plowing in the winter, maintaining a common area, and maintenance of a small private road that adjoins two public roads. We had one household who hadn't paid their dues for 2 years. I reached out to the homeowner to inquire, and they raised an objection over money they thought was owed to them by the association. Even though they claimed they were owed money, they hadn't attended our annual meetings to discuss the matter, submitted anything to the board about it despite submitting a separate request for approval on some other items, or responded to the dues notices. On top of that, one of the members of the household was on the board of the HOA up until the year before they stopped paying their dues. A meeting was scheduled and they were given notice that we would be discussing the money they felt owed to them, and they would need to attend to tell their side of the story. They didn't show up, but we still offered an olive branch: pay your entire balance due and submit an invoice to the board for an agreed upon amount, and we will pay the invoice. We made it clear that the dues are independent of their complaint and must be paid. They didn't respond. The following year, they again didn't pay their dues. They were threatened with collections, to no avail. Next year, still nothing. By this point they were now 4 years delinquent to the tune of $1,350. For reference, this is a $500,000 plus house where they have annual property taxes upwards of $10,000, so $325 annual dues are a drop in the bucket. By this point, I'd looked up their property in the county recorder's website, found their mortgage agreement and a clause stating they were required to stay current with HOA dues and property taxes. We sent a letter via certified mail with signature confirmation, stating that if they didn't pay the dues, we'd place a lien against the property, and also pointed out they could be in violation of their mortgage agreement. They wouldn't sign for the letter, so it was returned to me. I left it in their door. A few weeks by with no response, so I emailed their lender and eventually got someone on the phone. I explained the situation, provided him with copies of emails and letters that had been sent, and let him know if we didn't have payment by the due date we'd be placing a lien against the home. About a week later, we got full payment from the homeowner with an angry letter, and they've paid their dues on time ever since. I'm sure I'll get a fair amount of hate from anti-HOA folks, but the dues cover the cost of plowing and salting the private road their house is on. Only 4 out of approximately 30 houses are on the private road, as well as maintaining a gate on the private road. Next one is titled, "Don't Mock My Height Please." I, female 26, recently just signed up on some dating app. I include my height as just under 5 inches, and yes, I'm short. A few minutes later I got a message from some guy that is shown as popular in my area, and he said, "Wow, you're under 5. What are you, a midget?" That crap hurts. I mean, I can't do anything about my height. It's just the way it is. Then I just replied, "Oh wow, it's you. You hooked up with my friend once a few weeks ago, and she said your dick looked like a baby's thumb." "What a disaster," she said. He didn't take it very well by asking me which girl. I just said, "Sorry, can't tell you. But I know it's you. And also, I'm gonna speed this useful information on some private dating groups for girls on Facebook, so they can steer clear of you." He straight up asked my number and said he wanted to talk. I said, "Talk for what?" He said, "You're damaging my reputation. I could sue you for slandering." Then I said, "Lol. Good luck with that." Then he kept sending me all these hateful messages. I just unmatched him. Best feeling ever. And no, I didn't post anything about him. Just wanted to give him a little shock. Last one is titled, "They blamed me for stealing, all I did was prove them wrong." So after finishing a design program in school, I quit my temp job in financial services and started to focus on design. A couple of friends were at a small events company that also had their own TV show, a video game, and lifestyle TV show. They needed someone to help out on the show and do some of the other design work around the studio so that they could focus on pre-production. Sounded amazing, so I went into their offices, sat with them for a chat and started the same day. At first, all was good. The boss seemed okay. He asked me to get a coffee with him, let's call him Drake, and kind of probed my background. I went to film school, worked as a camera assist and dropped for a while before switching my focus to motion design and 3D. This set off a light bulb in his head and had me doing pre-production on the show. I brought in a friend to help produce and everything went forward. I worked on the show for about a year and a half. The show itself was fun. I got flown to E3, PAX and pretty much every major local gaming and cosplay expo. Worked with a bunch of famous cosplayers and minor expo celebrities and had a great time doing it. But during all this, I saw Drake slowly push me, making jokes about me and the producer, inappropriate comments about our personal lives, angry outbursts for no real reason, the inability to reason or compromise, and later, saw how dodgy the business was. Getting quotes from suppliers and then in the middle of the project calling and demanding they lower their quote or not be paid. Making behind-the-scenes deals with sponsors of the show to take marketing budgets, put it into the show but then split the money with the marketing manager who made the deal. Taking prizes that were intended as giveaways for the show and just selling the product on eBay to line his pockets. All the while, I figured, I've been here a while, I see him burn people every day, but surely it won't happen to me. He owes me more than that. I'm making this show for him, did the title sequence, the graphics package, secured sponsors, and organized social media, shot the show, edited, mastered and delivered. Oh, how wrong I was. Things started getting worse, a bunch of big events were happening, and in addition to the show, I had to help out with the events work. I was burnt out but had a trip coming up, so had to stick it out until it was all paid for and over. I had already decided I was going to leave for my trip and not return to the company. In the weeks before my leave, the major event happened. And during the event, something with some location audio went wrong. It didn't really have anything to do with me, but he grabbed me by the collar and told me if I didn't fix it he would kill me. That was my whoa moment. This guy is actually a sociopath. I figured I needed to take some precautions to protect myself as I still had a week until I'd be leaving and then I was out. I started by packing all of my gear at the studio and getting it out of there. Each day I'd stay back late and pack as much as I could. By this point, the whole show was operating on my equipment, my camera, my lenses, my sound equipment, my raids, my software licenses. So I got that all out. I then backed up every piece of correspondence I had from him, all my invoice emails, any requests in writing, any receipts, etc. I got my last invoice in, and let him know that I was off and would see him when I got back. Again, no plans of going back, but best to keep that from him until my invoices were paid out. On the day of my flight, he called me 5 or 6 times asking about footage from the major event. It was all stored on my drive but wasn't scheduled to be cut down until well after my return. This was an insurance policy. Technically I signed no contract with him, so I owned that footage. I called him and said it's not scheduled to be cut down yet, but it's on the server, knowing he wouldn't know how to check that anyway. A week into my trip, I sent an email asking why my invoices hadn't been paid yet. I had previously asked that they are prioritized given my holiday, and he agreed. I was met with an email from the troll he hired as an events coordinator, but really she was just the receptionist with a fancy title. She stated that there was an ongoing police investigation, as I had clearly robbed the office before leaving. All of the equipment was missing, drives, footage erased from the server, not true, etc. She included a police event number and said if I didn't return all equipment and pay the company $5,000, they would be pressing charges against me. I laughed and fired back that all of the missing equipment is mine, but I'm happy to look over any receipts they have for it. I immediately called the police and gave the officer the event number and asked what was going on. She explained that a woman, the office troll, came in and made claims that I had stolen from the business but had no evidence and was advised she would need to provide proof, but never returned to do so. I told her about them, demanding I pay up $5,000 or they'd press charges. The police officer took a statement from me in case it went further, as this was a clear case of extortion. I just wanted out, and they were willing to go to these lengths to weasel me out of the money I earned killing myself for them? I was pissed off, to say the least. And I knew enough about their business to destroy them. Step 1. I immediately sent my unpaid invoices to a collections agency. They straight away fired off a letter of demand, which informed Drake of my desire to seek the unpaid invoices as well as legal costs should it come to that via the legal system. I got all of those backed up emails together, that prove I was working on the days I invoiced them. And since my invoices are itemized by project, those emails should match with the specific projects I was working on. Step 2. I start hitting him where it hurts. For starters, their only software licenses were mine. Prior to my arrival, they were operating entirely on pirated software. I didn't touch any of their software while doing work for them. 3D was handled on my own machines. We started doing post in the Creative Cloud and I left their pirated FCP licenses alone. So aside from uninstalling my own software and plugins from their machines, everything was back to the way it was before I left. So I reported his company to the BSA, the Software Alliance, and was surprised when I heard back immediately. Drake was running 5 or so edit suites with pirated copies of Creative Suite, FCP, Microsoft Office, Maya, 3ds Max, etc. A lot of expensive software. The guy who emailed me back asked if he could call me and basically told me that they often have no way of knowing if a company is using pirated software, so they really rely on tips such as mine to go after companies. I forwarded him emails where I had advised Drake that we needed a specific piece of software and the cost involved, and his responses where he would CC me in and ask the IT guy to pirate the software. This was pretty much all they needed to fully implicate Drake. The guy then asked me to let him know how many computers were in the office, and I provided him with a map of Drake's office, with locations for each computer and the server, and a list of all software on each machine. Really easy to get this, as I still had access to their servers and could remote into each computer. Step 3. I discredit the business. I put out some business reviews on Google so that people would know what kind of shady operation Drake is running. I filed a copyright claim against their show reel, since the entire reel was made up of projects I did for them and I never signed over those rights. I commandeered a web player service they were using to host and monetize the TV show and removed each episode and deleted the account. I took over their Twitter page and posted info about how the company would rip off clients. I emailed a couple of major games expos who he had partnered with for both the events and TV show. Let him know about how he would regularly have me alter footage to make it appear as though he was delivering on contractual obligations, comp in Twitch.tv logos to make it seem like he was live streaming events, add banners where there weren't any, etc. Minor things, but things these companies were paying him to do. I even adjusted the "About Me" part of the website. And it wasn't very flattering. Now I still had a friend working there, so I was informed of every reaction. Every time he shouted my name in anger, I knew about it. The BSA fined him over $60,000. When Drake heard the news, he threw his iPhone against the glass wall in his office, smashing it. I received a very nice reward for turning him in. He held out on paying my invoices until the very end, sending threatening emails the whole time and demanding that I pay him money for the trouble I've put him through. It went to court. I didn't need to attend. I won the entirety of my invoices as well as the cost of taking him to court. He basically paid for me to sue him. That year was the last year for the show. Likely had trouble getting sponsors after I emailed all of them about the way he was selling prizes on eBay and sent them a link to his eBay store page. He also no longer had involvement in some of the major gaming expos he'd previously done events work for. Those two losses would have cost him a few $100,000 a year. The page on the website was up for months. When he found it, he again smashed his phone. This time though, he didn't have a glass wall to break, as he had to move out of the very nice office with water views to a small shitty office in a strip mall. I think he was having financial difficulties. It was on this night that he drunk called me and threatened to kill me. I celebrated his call by deleting all of the footage I had taken of that major event. The budget for the event was over $1 million, and a lot of that footage was the only proof he had even done the event. 5 camera operators' footage, crane footage, drone footage of the venue, all recorded sound from MICS, all gone. Knowing he'd never be able to get that back was great. Plus his threatening phone call along with the extortion attempts that were on file were enough to get a restraining order put out against him. And I cannot wait until he inevitably messes up and tries to do something again. Thanks for listening.